Hello everyone, back to today's first video. We do the delayed July 2019 month-ahead forecast for today's first video. So you're going to have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre and CFSV2 to see what those two models are showing for July. And then I'll give you the forecast from gazsurveys.com. We'll begin by having a look at what happened in June, and we'll end with a little sneak peek at August. Just say that the second video coming up on the homepage later on this afternoon, we'll be having a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days and beyond. So that's going to take us into the middle part of July, of course. So getting on with the first video, the Gazsurveys June forecast was for a slightly warmer than average month, up to around a degree above the 81 to 2010 average, and a rather wetter month as well, we thought. We were seeing signs of a rather more unsettled month, although the long-range forecast didn't really agree on that at the time, but we did think probably quite an unsettled June, with our first sort of wetter than average month widely across the country for some time. So actually what finished up happening with the temperatures during June 2019 is that it came out very, very close to average. So for eastern parts of England and also southwestern Scotland, slightly above average temperatures there. But for the majority of the country, actually, we've just really close to average. And actually most of the month was cooler than average. It was only due to the fact that we had some much warmer weather in the final sort of week or so of the month that pulled us up to average. Otherwise, it would have been a rather cooler than average month. And if you have 3 weeks in a summer month that is below average and 1 week in a summer month that is above average, even if it is substantially above average, I think your overall impression of that month is a relatively poor summer month, actually. So you do have to drill down into the detail a little bit sometimes. So although our temperature anomaly for June has come out very close to average, I think most people's impression of the month would be a rather cool, chilly sort of month, really. Just those final days were enough to pull the temperature anomaly up to average, because it did get, particularly for a couple of days, very warm right at the very end of the month. But that's not really enough to offset most people's impression of a relatively cool month. So I'm not sure the precipitation side of the June forecast went, the temperature side of the June forecast went all that well. But the precipitation side was better. We did come away with a wetter than average month in most parts of the country, very significantly wetter than average in central parts of England and Wales. Really, really wet month there. Less so further north. It's one of those funny months where it's a bit wetter down in the south compared to the north. So normally northern parts of the country will be wetter than the south, but this is one of those strange months where it's actually wetter down across the south. We did pinpoint the fact that we're probably going to have our first wetter than average month for quite some time widely across the UK. So I think that side of the forecast went better, maybe a little bit wetter than we expected, but overall quite pleased with the fact that we did pick out that June was likely to be a much more unsettled month compared to what we've had for quite a long time, and our first wetter month for quite a long time as well. So temperature-wise, bit of a mixed bag, not all that good temperature-wise, better precipitation-wise. I think we've got a broad pattern okay. We did also highlight the fact that we'd like to get at least one spell of hot weather. We got that right at the end of the month. So overall, relatively pleased, I think, with the way the June forecast came out. Right, so let's move on to July. This is the 700 millibar height anomaly from the CFSV2 for July 2019. This is what it's showing. It has an area of above average height sitting just to our west, so a ridge of high pressure to our west and going up towards Greenland, with below average heights to our east. A trough is in over Scandinavia. If we come over here, you can see a little bit better. Trough is in over Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe. This sends a jet stream on that sort of northwest-southeast alignment. It means that we probably have quite a coolish July, so temperatures aren't going to be particularly exciting. But as the Atlantic is blocked off, it should be a relatively dry sort of month. see this quite well on the temperature anomalies. So actually a significantly cooler than average month. Much of Scandinavia, northern parts of Europe are coming up to below average temperature-wise this July. Out in the west of Europe, we're closer to average. You see it's warmer than average in southern parts of France down to Spain and Portugal. But really for the UK, we're looking at average temperatures here. Again, we've got that northwest southeast alignment to the jet stream, doing something a little bit like that with the main trough in up here, pulling down winds from the north. So that's the reason it's cooler than average across northern parts of Europe. So close to average with temperature anomalies, but also significantly drier than average. So a coolish sort of dry type month really being signalled by the CFS-V2. High pressure is out here to our west and also to our northwest. The jet stream is doing something a bit like that. So we block off the Atlantic quite a lot, and that means we're not bringing rain-bearing weather systems in from west. And we're not bringing up thundery lows from the south either. That's the two ways we tend to get rain in the summer, either from Atlantic weather systems going from west to east, or pushing up thundery areas of low pressure from the south. We're not doing either of those two things really here, with the Atlantic blocked off and the jet stream on a northwest southeast alignment. So that's why we come away with actually quite a significantly drier than average month. Let's see how that compares to the Beijing Climate Centre. So this is the 500 millibar height anomaly from the Beijing Climate Centre for the next 30 days. This takes us from the 6th, I should say, of July to the 4th of August. So we have below average heights sitting within the 500 millibar flow in the North Atlantic and over the UK. There's a bit of a northern blocking signal up here too, and there's below average heights going in towards northern parts of Europe as well. This looks more unsettled compared to the CFS-V2. It's more of a westerly type setup, bringing in westerlies across the Atlantic rather like that. The temperature anomaly with the Beijing Climate Centre isn't too bad. It's close to average. Really, so average, ever so slightly above average with the temperature anomaly. Not a particularly hot month, but I mean, certainly nothing like what we had last July. But overall, slightly on the warmer than average side. And also more unsettled. So whereas the CFS-V2 is drier than average for July, the Beijing Climate Centre is actually a bit wetter than average. Again, not significantly so. It's not a big anomaly, but certainly it does look a little bit wetter than average. With Beijing Climate Centre, and a complete contrast to the CFS-V2, which of course is going for a significantly drier than average month. So we've got problems here. We have a very uncertain pattern. We've got disagreements between these long-range models, and even within the shorter range, there's a lot of uncertainty at play, kind of like for the next week to 10 days that we've been highlighting in the videos recently. So we have got a few problems for the July forecast. Tentatively, I'm still tempted to go for a relatively dryish month here, but maybe two halves offsetting one another. So I think the first half of the month could turn out to be quite dry, and with a fair amount of warm, sort of pleasant weather, never overly hot probably, but a fair amount of warm and pleasant weather in the first half of the month, and relatively dry, and then maybe go more unsettled, at least for a while, in the second half of the month. We may go into a rather wetter spell of weather, potentially a little bit volatile with that again as well, so maybe risk of thunder, could be a brief hot spell in there as well, but if, again, similar to June, if it does get hot, it's very likely to quickly break down, probably not being sustained. So I think the second half of the month looks much more interesting from a weather perspective, because I think there will be more weather going on. Could be quite a bit wetter, and it could be rather volatile as well, so the risk of a hot spell, but also turning thundery. The first half of the month looks relatively benign, a lot of quiet weather, I think, in the first half of the month. Fair amount of dry weather. Will be some showers at times, but a fair amount of dry weather in the first half. Not overly hot, but pleasantly warm. You know, just very pleasant sort of summer weather, and then it all gets a bit more interesting in the second half of the month. And maybe as we go towards the very end of the month, possibly starting to set up a hotter pattern that will tie in with the summer forecast, where we are highlighting August to be the hottest and driest month of the summer. Possibly we would start to see signs of that very late on in the month, towards the end of the month. But we'll have to wait and see on that. I do think the second half of July will be more unsettled compared to the first half. So it's a really complicated forecast, though, this. So it's released with relatively low confidence. Do keep that in mind. Temperature-wise, temperature anomalies, I think probably coming out very close to average again, maybe a little bit above, not a big deviation. Certainly nowhere near as hot as we had last July. Will be kind of like 3 degrees, potentially 2 or 3 degrees below July 2019, I think, with our overall temperature anomaly this month. Precipitation-wise, again, probably quite close to average because we have a relatively dry first half, probably being offset by a much more unsettled second half of the month. So, averaging it all out, we probably come out quite close to average. So, in the end, maybe fairly average with temperature and precipitation anomalies, that masks quite a contrast between the first half and the second half of the month. But again, do bear in mind the uncertainty about this July. Finally, just having a look at August, so this is the 700 millibar height anomaly from the CFS V2 for August. And overall, it's going for a relatively anticyclonic month, actually, an area of above average height centred almost over top of the country. That would send the jet stream northwards like that, and that will give us a lot of dry, fine and potentially warm weather as we go into the final month of summer 2019. So that would tie in as well, I suppose, with regards to this summer forecast. But we shall see about that. It's a really long way off, and we know that July is already very uncertain. So I think for August, confidence is going to be really, really low. Right, so that's the best we can do for you for this month. It is a very complicated month. Overall, quite close to average with temperature and precipitation anomalies for the month. But this mask, that the first half is relatively quiet, quite warm, but never overly hot, and also quite dry. The second half of the month livens up. It potentially becomes quite a lot more unsettled, but also potentially a little bit volatile. There may be a hot spell in there in the second half of the month. If there is, it's likely to blow up very rapidly into thunder, and so we have quite an interesting second half of the month, potentially. Right, so that's it for July forecast. We should be back later on this afternoon with your week to 10-day video update. That will be with you on the homepage later this afternoon. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.